Things that are mainstream tend to become the latest trends in our world. They dictate what's popular, what's cool, and what people should expect to see in their day-to-day life. So what exactly would happen if furries became mainstream? Hey everyone, I'm Soren, and today we're going to be talking about what would happen if the furry fandom became mainstream. Now, when I say mainstream, I mean like, what if the furry fandom grew large enough for furries to become a commonly known group of people? Not necessarily making fursuits the latest trends of the year, as great as that would be. And while furries themselves may not be mainstream at the moment, a huge part of the fandom basically already is. Anthropomorphic animals, the very thing this fandom is based on, are already mainstream thanks to tons of media like Disney and cartoons. I mean, come on, you're gonna try and tell me that these movies that you grew up with aren't at least a little bit furry? So if the furry fandom is built on admiring anthro animals, is the fandom becoming mainstream really that far behind? Well, yes and no. Yes, in that more furry media is starting to be accepted into society thanks to the stuff I mentioned before, and there's also way less negative media coverage on it, with a lot of news media outlets actually making some more positive and informational videos. Granted, some of them could be improved, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, and infinitely better than that one CSI episode. However, I still wouldn't consider furries being mainstream, since this is still considered to be a pretty niche hobby by many people. We're not as accepted as the other geek or nerd fandoms just yet, but we're also not being antagonized as much as we used to be, so again, it's a step in the right direction. But let's imagine that furries are starting to become mainstream. Would the fandom be better or worse as a result? Well, first we need to know what exactly would change. If furries were normalized, we would hopefully be treated like any other fandom, which means that we would just be left alone most of the time. Sure, we would still get teased or made fun of from time to time, but nothing as bad as it is now. Not only that, but this would also assume that more general information about furries is more readily available. Like, if someone says that they're a Marvelite, most people don't have to ask things like, what does that mean? Or, what do you do? And yes, when I told a friend I was a furry, his first reaction was, so what exactly do you do? But as a Marvelite, it's already assumed that you do things to express your appreciation for the various Marvel franchises, because the Marvel fandom is already pretty mainstream. With more common knowledge of what exactly furries do means that there wouldn't be as many common misconceptions about furries. See, most negative stereotypes about furries come from people who genuinely have no idea about the fandom. And what stops a lot of people from becoming furries is simply that they don't know enough about it, or that the fandom even exists at all. Would-be furries, so to speak, look at the fandom at first glance and just say, that doesn't seem like it's for me. When in reality, if they knew the full picture, they'd realize that this might be something they're interested in, and that it's not just a bunch of people running around in giant animal costumes. And more parents would let their kids join, since many of them mistake the fandom for being a purely sexual interest. All these changes would be absolutely amazing and would ease a lot of the worries people have with being a furry, which is the feeling that they have to hide their involvement with it out of fear of being bullied for having such a niche interest. On the other hand, there are some possible downsides to consider. When something becomes popular, businesses can and will find some way to capitalize on it. In fact, something like this already happened. In 2019, there was this company who started advertising designer fursuits. Yes, they were basically trying to make the supreme edition of fursuits, with the company logo printed on the fursuit and everything. Many people in the furry fandom disliked the idea of brand-named fursuits, since the fandom already prides itself on its self-sufficient economy. Many of the things that you can buy in the furry fandom are made by furries, for furries, and most of it is custom made to order. So the very idea of having designer fursuits and associating a brand name with a higher status goes against everything already established in the fandom. But if furries were to become mainstream, there is the possibility of more companies like this one trying to do the same thing. Something else to consider is that some people simply may not want the fandom to become mainstream. The idea of escapism is a very important aspect to some people in the furry fandom. Being a furry allows them to momentarily distract themselves from their daily lives. This isn't always the case for everyone who uses the fandom as an escape outlet, but regardless, the fandom can be a separate space to express yourself in ways you couldn't in your personal life. However, if furries became mainstream, this would bring the fandom closer to their personal lives, and may not provide the same sense of escapism as before. So naturally, they would be opposed to the idea of furries becoming mainstream. The question of should furries be mainstream doesn't have a super easy answer, since it's up to your own personal opinion and feelings about the fandom. And besides, it's not like becoming mainstream is as simple as hitting an on and off button. If furries ever were to become mainstream, it would be gradual, and we'd see all these changes occur over time. But the best case scenario is to find a happy medium where we're just well known enough for negative stereotypes to become less common, but not popular enough to receive the downsides. But what do you think? Would you want furries to become mainstream? Let me know down in the comments. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. But until next time, see ya!